Nashville is alive with music, sure, but creativity also thrives in our art, marketing, technology, food, and in every corner of our community. On Creative Assembly's The Spark podcast, our mission is to amplify Nashville's diverse creative voices, foster growth through shared journeys, and inspire a city that thrives on collaboration. Each episode will take a deep dive into the lives and passions of Nashville's most innovative minds. We'll explore their creative processes, the challenges they face, and power of collaboration, along with so much more. Welcome to the Spark Podcast, brought to you by Snapshot, a digital agency on a mission to serve with heart, execute with excellence, and build something bigger together. And now, here's The Spark.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Spark by Creative Assembly, where Nashville's creativity comes together. I'm your host, Mark Scrivener, and today we're sitting down with someone who doesn't just build brands, he distills them down to their very essence. Colton Mulligan is the founder and strategist behind FoxFuel Creative, a Nashville agency that's earned a reputation for pushing brands to go deeper, get clearer, and connect better. Colton brings a refreshing, soulful approach to an industry that often prizes flash over substance. Today we'll talk about his journey, what it really means to uncover a brand's truth, and why clarity always beats cleverness. Let's dive in. Hey, Colton, welcome to the Spark Podcast. Really appreciate you being a part of it. I guess, just to kick us off, I know storytelling is in your DNA, and we're going to talk a lot about that today. But, was there a moment growing up or early in your career that maybe inspired you to get in this field of marketing and branding?
Can I roll it real far back?
Yeah.
When I was in summer camp as a teenager, and like even preteens or whatever, I was never the jock. I hit puberty late, right? So we're all at summer camp, you're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. I hit puberty late, and so I was always this small, skinny kid, right? And you show up to summer camp, and you got the baseball jocks and this, and you got all this other stuff. And I realized, I was a red-blooded American male as every other, which means oh, cool, you love to have a camp girlfriend or this or that, right? And I learned early on, I didn't have to be a jock. I didn't have to be cool. All I had to do was be confident and funny and know how to tell a good story. And I remember it sunk in from the time I was 12 years old, which was in a space where nobody knows each other or people are trying to figure out who am I, where do I fit in? If you're just a guy that can tell a story and draw a crowd and make it funny and quick and short, that trumps the jock and the cool dude. It trumps everything else. You just got to tell a good story. So I don't know if I decided then I was going to be an agency owner, but if you ask when did I learn the power of story, it was literally summer camp as a preteen.
Summer camp to FoxFuel, that's amazing. But there's a lot in between that time period. Maybe just so that we can set the stage for the audience, maybe just talk a little bit about your trajectory from growing up to where you're at today with FoxFuel and just take us back.
Yeah, sure thing. So I graduated college and I got on at a small agency in West Tennessee as a new business specialist. That agency owner I said, hey man, what do I have to do? And I'll tell you this, he paid me $37,500 back in 2008. And I said, hey, what do I need to do? And he goes, you'll be successful if you just make 20 cold calls a day, 20 fresh cold calls a day, and then call back anybody else you had a connection with. So, and that was it. And I was like, sales training or whatever? He goes, no man, you got it. I've never in my career did I have a manager. And I didn't. It suited me well. I'd go through and I'd go look at what trade shows happened at the Chicago, Miami, and Vegas every 6 weeks. I'd plan on going to a trade show. I'd pull up the exhibitor list and I would just manually go on the website for all those companies and I would cold call my way through the entire exhibitor list and just try and say, hey, I'm going to be out in Vegas next week at CES. Would love to come by and talk to you. And that's what I did. I made 10,000 cold calls in 2 years.
Wow.
And I learned, oh shit, can I cuss? I don't have to cuss.
Yeah, no, you can.
I'm allowed to cuss?
Yeah, I think so.
I
think there's a lot of agency owners that do cuss. So okay. I think you're going to be good.
All right, sounds good. And so after that, after 2.5 years of that, I learned, protect accounts. I learned how, and I was landing the accounts and then handing them over to an account service team. And they were not maintaining the accounts. I'd sign them on a 6-month retainer and they'd quit. And I didn't know any better to know, if you're landing the accounts and somehow your commission against a draw is built on that, you better be, you've earned the right to manage them. So anyway, and this has nothing to do with starting FoxFuel yet, other than early lessons in my career. So I did that for 2.5 years, moved to Nashville, worked for an agency, and then I was we were with an agency called MMA Creative for a couple of years. And then my 2 current business partners were working at the same shop as well. And we can get into the details, but I'll skip forward past some wild stuff. Short story, we bought out our non-compete contracts, And then, self-funded entrepreneur story, put, second mortgage on the house, cleaned out my investments, borrowed money from a doctor friend, my grandma, my dad, did all the stuff to go out to buy out those contracts and started out. That was 10 years ago in January.
God.
And now here we are.
Colton, though, I mean, and you are the quintessential like entrepreneur agency owner in that, one, you talk about the early days and the confidence and the storytelling that it took to, not just be a jock, but still be a part of the club. And then it's like, then you got your early career was starting doing SDR, sales development rep, right? Even though they gave you a different title, that was what it was, 10 cold calls, 20 cold calls a day. And I think every agency owner that I've seen that are like highly successful, it takes a sales first like mentality. Like you've got to build it. But then like just hearing you say, man, I put a second mortgage on my house and, you were all in. You burned your ships and you had no way to go back. You had to make FoxFuel, successful. And so, I love hearing that journey. But, before the show, we talked a little bit about just, something that may be unique that people out there might not know about Colton. And you talked a little bit about how it pushed you out of MMA Creative and how you and your business partners went and founded FoxFuel. Would you share that?
I'd love to, Mark. So I'll Quentin Tarantino this story.
Okay.
The same month we founded FoxFuel, January 2015, is the same month I got diagnosed with type 1 bipolar disorder as the culmination of a pretty wild 2014. And I'll give just the highlights that might be pertinent to agency owners or whatnot. I was an account executive with the agency we were at in 2014 in January, and I just went through what I did not know was a major depression. So high anxiety. I went to a therapist and had the dark days. That started in January. By February, I was with a therapist. By March, April, straight up having thoughts of self-harm. Driving on the way to that agency, I would think if I just turn the wheel like that, I'll hit that tree and it's all over, and it's easier that way, right? So dark stuff. So that's that. In the middle of that, my now business partner, Michael Hutzel, who was the creative director at the agency, came to me and he said, hey man, I came back to work at this agency because he'd gone and worked for GSNF and other shops in town. He comes back and he said, I came back here because I want to be an agency owner one day and I want to own part of this agency. Will you go in with me and we'll approach the current owners, see if we can buy in at maybe 10%. And you take 5, I take 5, and we'll scrounge up the cash and do it. I was in the bottom of depression. We were at 12 South Tap Room. And I remember just being like, he has no idea that I'm terrible at my job. I think I'm about to lose all the accounts. I wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning just spinning, thinking I'm awful at what I do. And I'm already in depression. I can get a little delusional. And I was like, I'm going to have to go get a job at Best Buy. I'm going to lose this job this week, and I'm going to go get a job at Best Buy. Anyway, do that. Fast forward. We get to the point where ultimately what I didn't know, I'm going down, and then in May, I went to my primary care doctor, and they put me on an antidepressant, but I was not on a mood stabilizer, which means that when I'm down in the bottom of depression and you put me on an antidepressant, I rocket up through the effing ceiling. So I go into full-blown mania, but I don't know it. I still haven't been diagnosed with bipolar. I've only been diagnosed with major depression, generalized anxiety. So that summer, I asked Hutz, I chat Hutz, and I was like, hey man, Michael Hutzel's my business partner, I call him Hutz. And I said, Hutz, can we, I'd love to I chatted him and I said, hey man, let's talk about that agency owner thing. I got an idea. And he goes, if you're serious, we got to chat now because I'm about to leave, not the office, but I'm leaving the agency. I was like, all right. We went to ML Rose, we talked, and I was like, I don't want to buy into the agency. I want to buy out. Let's buy out our non-competes. Let's go start our own agency. And Mike will, if we buy out our non-competes, we can ask our clients if they want to go become our first clients at this new agency. He said, yeah, let's do it. Got Joe, who was, so I'm accounts and brand strategy. Michael is creative director. Joe is, we do a lot of web development and whatnot. So he's overall code, right? So he's our CTO. And yeah, so then we started the agency out of that. We started out of my basement, scrounged up, as I mentioned, all the ways we had to get cash. I'll skip past the details, just note that I was still not properly medicated, not properly diagnosed. And in October of that year in 2014, as we were starting the agency behind the scenes, filing for LLCs, I just had a weekend of really self-destructive behavior. Lost a lot of friendships over it. I didn't do anything illegal, but it was a really rough weekend. And through that, I had a friend sit down. She bawled her eyes out, and she was like, hey, I think you've got type 1 bipolar disorder. And I was like, what do I do? She was like, you got to go see a psychiatrist, get a therapist, get on the right meds. And that was in January, and that was the start of FoxFuel. So I say all that only because, I don't know, I think Michael always would have become an agency owner. I honestly don't think I would have. It was the mania is the highs of confidence, delusions of grandeur, and all of that early confidence that some agency owners need to be able to walk into a room and, you have you have 5 clients, right? And to be able to say, oh yeah, that project, it's $150,000. And you just have to have like extreme levels of confidence, even though your agency's been around for 90 days to do that stuff. So anyway, that's the story.
Well, I mean, I feel like we took the audience really deep, really fast, and I really appreciate it. I've heard your story a couple times, and man, I appreciate your authenticity of telling that. It is a part of who you are and your brand, and and how you've. I'm sure that you've heard of David Rendell. He wrote that book, Freak Factor. I think he spoke here in town. I listened to him, and it's about like using using one of your weaknesses as a strength, and maybe like people would perceive bipolar as being a weakness, but you've clearly made it a strength for how you've, approached life and the agency world and built something pretty incredible with FoxFuel. Do you, how do you think that, does it play into like a strength for you? Like how would you address that?
Hands down my superpower and my kryptonite. 100%. That's honestly only manageable, especially with an agency, because I have 2 unbelievable business partners. Having Joe and Hutz, so we each own a third of the agency. And so when I'm in the highs, like I made bad decisions, like financial, like bad decisions that never would have bankrupted the agency. But it was Joe and Hutz whenever I had some wild hair or whatever. And they were like, let's jot this down. Why don't we revisit this later next week, right? Because they know my cycles and whatnot. And so when I've been, down in the bottoms of delusion, thinking that we were going to lose the agency or this or that, or when I'm up in the highs, potentially making bad decisions, Joe and Hutz are these great like equalizers in terms of rationale and reason. And so I mentioned that, but then, running a creative agency, especially when you're doing creative work and in the highs of mania, I need very little sleep. And so you're up at 2 or 3 a.m. with all this creative energy. It was a great time, especially in the early days, to crank out, to collaborate with Hutz, but coming up with campaign ideas or, different ways to do things, ways that you're going to pitch different concepts and whatnot. It's super helpful in the early days. And then it's great having those business partners, kryptonite-wise. Like, dude, when I'm in the fog and I can't think and I have no confidence and I just kind of need to pull back into a shell for a little while, like having Joe and Hutz are phenomenal, obviously.
And you guys do amazing work, award-winning agency. Like, who have been some of like your biggest like mentors maybe through this, people that have really been by your side through, not just the business challenges, but even like life challenges?
I have to think. I don't know any other agency owners in the life challenges space, but on the business front, Brandon Edwards, who started and ran Revive Health. And so they focused specifically, so they were a PR, they were a comms creative agency that just did healthcare. And then they got bought by BBDO or so, I can't remember. They got bought by one of those
Weber Shandwick, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's it. You know your stuff. But he was my mentor, and I don't know. But he was great. He taught me a lot of things about like being prepared and whatnot. I asked him to be my mentor in the very first time. So he said, hey man, that sounds great. We're not going to set consistent meetings. Whenever you have something to talk about, we'll meet. And he said, just reach out and we'll schedule something. Send me the things you want to talk about, 3 to 5 questions or topics, at least 24 hours in advance, so I can make sure to make the most of our time. The very first meeting came, and I forgot to send him the questions because I wasn't prepared. And he sent me an email that morning. He said, Colton, I'm so sorry that you didn't have time to send me those questions. I'm canceling today's meeting. Let me know when you have those topics together and we'll meet again. And I'd never, like, that informed, at least when I'm asking for somebody's time, it really informed, whether that was, I did this thing called Coffee, Lunch, and Beers, where I went all over the city just interviewing folks when I started FoxFuel because I didn't know what I was doing. And I would follow that model, where when I would email somebody, also like to put them at ease, like networking wise, it let them know like, oh, he's not selling me. He literally wants to know about like how to manage people, because he said like, I've never done this before. I'm 6 months into running the agency. How do I, yada, yada, yada. And so anyway, that's he did a lot for me then. And then later on, like he would open up the books, which some agency owners keep that like really close to the vest. He was awesome about like, yeah, man, here, I'll tell you how much I pay my people. Here's our comp structures. Here's the terms of my buyout. Like it was awesome how like just open he was with someone, just some young 30-year-old punk kid, trying to run an agency.
Totally. Well, that's the whole reason we started Creative Assembly, is to like break down the barriers of that competition. It's like we talked about like sharing a dashboard that we use, and you use one similar, and it's like now we're going to share with each other. And I think, learning together just makes everybody so much better versus like, God, I got to keep it close to the vest because, you compete with me. And it's like, just so much business out there. And I appreciate the story about Brandon. He is he's a driver, and that's how he's built his business. And that was a great lesson for you of, man, I got to be prepared. So how about like from your agency standpoint, like what have been some of the biggest like highs that you've had? Like, proudest moments, maybe even like a low.
Can I tell you one other thing that I realized Brandon Edwards taught me? This is fun. So you've worked in healthcare. You've worked a lot in healthcare. You know what healthcare rooms look like, and if you're pitching a board, right? It's a lot of suits. It's a lot of blue blazers, khakis, all that stuff. Like you get it all the time. I know that regularly he does not dress this way. This is not how, but Mark he knows how to present himself and show up to look the part, which is what my dude's doing. Can I even look in the camera and do all this stuff? All right, I'm just doing that.
That's funny.
So here's what I loved about Brandon. The dude is tatted up. Southern California guy showing up to like what can be stuffy boardrooms to pitch concepts and create. And you got to go in and convince people, hey, when, crisis comms, which is, what you can charge the most for. And the dude's all kinds of tatted up. And he was like, yeah, he didn't have like face tats, but I mean, full sleeves. And he was like, yeah, he goes, I have tattoos that you can't cover all of them up. But like, yeah, if I got to put on a shirt that's a collared shirt. But he was like, I also gave that up years ago. He just wear black T-shirts. And he's just himself, right? And I was like, if that dude can do it, I didn't realize it then. But when I started the agency, I grew a beard and I bought 3 suits, maybe 5 suits. Because I was like, I'm the youngest person in the room by like decades commonly, pitching against other agency owners that have a lot of gray hair and whatnot. And I was like, I've got to look the part. I have to look respectable in some capacity. And I did it for about 6 months, and it wasn't me. And so I would wear a blazer every now and then, but sooner and sooner I started just like wearing tennis shoes and being myself. And I realized in most rooms, every now and then we might lose, I'm sure that we got thrown out because of that. But they don't want to work with us anyway. Like, we're going to be a bad fit for you because I talk this way. Like you have to be comfortable having this style. And if you're the director of marketing, if you're going to bring me in to go pitch, you're picking the agency, but you want to know that this person's not going to embarrass you in front of the CEO. We got to get that this vibe works. And so sooner rather than later, I was like, if this tatted up dude can go be successful running, I don't know, $60, $80 million agency, whatever they were, then surely I can be okay, and I don't have to wear an ill-fitting suit for like a scrawny dude, and it'll still fit.
That is so funny. I did the same thing, Colton. It was like, man, I had suits and showed up to all these meetings, and it was stuffy. And I'll bet you that you lost a couple, but I bet you that you won a bunch because they don't want to work with somebody stuffy. They want to work with somebody that's creative, high energy, passionate about what they do, proud of the work they're doing. It's like you probably went in there and beat a lot of agencies out that showed up like really stuffy.
The other day, we're both members of an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. I'm assuming that you'll be talking about that on the podcast. Maybe not today, but at some point. I was at a dinner the other night for moderators in the organization. I was standing up giving, I'm outgoing forum chair, and I was giving a short speech just thanking everybody and doing it. And I cussed a few times while I was in there. And then if I get up and talk in those rooms, I get heckled. I got heckled once or twice by, they were doing whatever, and I was cussing and going back and forth with them. And I sat down, and he was like, "Hey man, have you heard of?" And I can't remember the guy's name, but he said, "I need you to watch this YouTube video." And he said, "Escape competition through being authentic." And he was like, "If you haven't seen it, it is what you do. You're just you're coming in as yourself with the expectation that it's not for everybody. But for those it is for, you're going to get a slight advantage because people may realize he may not have this, or they may not have this case study in their book or this or that, but there's something about working with him that kind of gets us excited, right? Like that passion and all that stuff you're talking about. Sometimes I'll be honest, I kind of have to rely on that because I might not have some massive roster of clients in a specific industry, or maybe something we haven't done before, especially when we started doing broadcast commercials and whatnot. We had no book for it, but I had to go in and pitch that we could. And so I've never thought about it that way. We're 10 years into the agency, but when he sent me that link and he was like, "You kind of do this," I was like, this is the best compliment. It was fantastic. So yeah.
Wow. Well, you and Michael and Joe, you guys have produced some incredible work over the years. I've been really proud to watch you guys just continue to grow and do great work. What is one project that maybe you guys are the most proud of when you sit around and talk about FoxFuel?
So there's probably a couple. One was TSA PreCheck. So we got, which was like a national campaign that we got to do the campaign for. There's a bit of drama behind that because of what happened with another agency in town and yada, yada, yada. But what was great is we were up against agencies that were 10 times our size. And so they did pick us to do the creative and the campaign for it. And so it went out to 20 major airports and all that stuff. Ultimately, they did switch to another agency that had we don't do PR. We don't do PR and comms. And there's a lot of other stuff that we don't do, which is why we kind of tend to focus on creative, a lot of marketing and then web development, but that's it. So, and that was a really great case study and a good early learning for us on like, don't get ill if you don't get picked for the other things. Like, it's okay if like this is the thing we're best at. It's okay to lean into it, just do that. And then it's okay if somebody else is doing some of the implementation, right? And media placement and all that, because it's like, cool, we don't do that. So I'm combining several things, Mark.
Yeah.
That is that was a really great project for us that also taught us a lot of things. I'll give you an anecdote from that. We were, in order to get the campaign approved, you had to have the TSA, like literally there were 30 people from TSA, a government or a conservative government organization where their whole job is just to like assess threats, right? So it's literally 20 or 30 people on the call, and they were ripping this to shreds because like they literally, one of the comments was, hey, and I mean, in the mock-up for that ad, that woman has red lipstick on, and that is bright red lipstick. We think it might be implying certain things. And I was like, implying what? And they were like, that she might be, you know, I don't want to use that language, but, you know, she might be lascivious. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was like, I think, because I didn't care. There was a company in the in-between that was like brokering and managing the thing. And I was like, I think I'm on, like, this is like a town hall with like that community from Flashdance or whatever. Like, this is absurd. And so there was that, and there were a number of other things, but it taught me a lot about like, A, it's great to win pitches. B, guess what? You're going to have to, like, you really have to fight for the creative sometimes, because they had the power. TSA is the government to shut it down and be like, this campaign's too wild for us. And then, yeah, it taught me a lot through that thing. So you asked for more, but there's one that we learned a lot from.
You know what's funny about that, and I think all the small, mid-sized agencies ought to like collaborate even more on these kind of stories, because something happened to us just recently. I mean, we worked with the management group to get Major League Soccer to Nashville, MLS to Nashville, and so we worked with them. We did all the branding,
Dude, that was great work,
marketing, and everything for them, and they end up getting the team to Nashville. So we won it. We worked with them for a short amount of time after, maybe like 3 or 4 months after. And then they, once they got here, they said, I think we're going to need a bigger agency now. And so you guys have been great to work with, but we're going to go work with someone else. And they did. So it's super frustrating, but it's also very rewarding. And I'm sure you did amazing work, and we're pretty proud of it, but it does sting at the end when you're not the one leading it all the way through.
Tell me if this is your approach when stuff like that happens, because obviously we were pissed about it at the time. And we've had other clients like that. What we do is we're like, we're going to promote the hell out of this to make the money back that we've been screwed out of some deals that way, where things were promised and then the contract would come back and be like, sorry, we had to. So when stuff like that happens, we also had a client stiff us on a bill. And we will be like, you know what? We are going to promote the hell out of this and make the money back with other pitches, like with other clients we land. Is that a similar? Okay.
It's what's the most frustrating is when like another agency might like take credit for it. Like they took credit for it in social of how they got they were so proud of the team that got, MLS to Nashville. It's like, oh man, I wish we could have gotten credited in that post as well, but no big deal. Like spoiled milk. But anyway, like what do you like today? What do you love the most about the work you're doing?
In an odd way, which because this is for like agency owners and whatnot, I have over time, I've been honestly, and I guess this applies to those that have partners. I'm still involved in the work, but my involvement is much less. Like I still wind up pitching concepts and whatnot, but I used to be a lot more involved in, like there were times where I wrote scripts in our poorer days. Yeah. I did voiceover for a Lipscomb campaign that we did, right? Like I was writing the script and doing this, but in the interest of like my relationship with Michael, our creative director, we just realized like there's a healthy tension sometimes and there's unhealthy tension at times. And for us and in our relationship years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I just discovered that we were having a better culture, which is why we'd started the agency, because we wanted to work and build the culture that we wanted, And so in doing so, I realized that like my dabbling in creative and where does the line start to blend between like meeting with the client, breaking down the business model, creating the brand strategy. When does brand strategy become creative direction? And Michael argued it starts way earlier in the process. And we just realized, for me at least, I just started kind of dialing back on how involved I am after basically the creative brief is written and the brand strategy's there. Hutz will still come in and he'll like tweak and change or create his own. But I've had to make the line of like, hey, after this point, I hand it off to creative and what they come back with is it. And I'll champion things sometimes, but that's not at all your question. But
no, that's great.
It's a bit of behind the curtain when I'm thinking about, all right, what are things that others may not share, I guess. I can still answer the question, but that's the gig.
Well, let's keep going down let's stay on the path of culture. I
Sure.
mean, culture can be vague for a lot of companies. What's something intentional that you, Michael, and the team have done to really keep that culture alive and make it thrive at FoxFuel?
And I'll be honest, to start off, like we always haven't had like great culture. Like especially for me, when I'm riding the highs and lows, I can be awful in mania. Like I can be like just obnoxious. I can interrupt people. I've got too many ideas. My patience is low. So if you look back over 10 years of FoxFuel, I'm not going to pretend like it was all like just sunshine and roses. Like it was not. I only know that because others have told me and I had to listen. From Colton's perspective, everything's amazing, right? So let me say that. If I look at what are the things that we've done that were good, we always did overnight retreats, sometimes one or sometimes even two a year, especially if we added a lot of members to the team. Mm-hmm. When I look back, I think those had a bonding effect. It would give, at least if you're looking for evidence, people would cry talking about their agency and what it's like to work with a team and how they found identity there and whatnot. So I would say when I think back on like some of our strongest moments, some things that employees would share like at retreats or like that big lift that you have for a while, because to me, those retreats, when you get a place outside of town or do whatever, it helps to remember that like, oh, this is a human. Like I remember, playing that board game that night and getting a little tipsy, telling stories and shit talking clients or whatever it is. And it would bond us in ways where like when we come back, and even my business partner Huts or, somebody with creative or accounts, that there at times where there might be tension otherwise, I kind of like, it gives you markers in like the relationship bank that we've made deposits where it makes it a little easier to be like, oh, dude, you remember that story that they have or this or that. And then it helps me like trigger a little more empathy to dial back on where I might double down in a debate versus like, hey, let them have a win, man. Like let them go do that thing. So I don't know, there's something.
That like self-awareness down the road as you run your agency for a while is just so powerful. But in the early days, and I mean, what you just shared is what I think every agency owner probably goes through is they are ultimately the problem with the culture, at points and times, and I know I have been, and so appreciate you sharing that. What I know being a small agency, because we're a small agency still, but got a little bit bigger, but like we still have to collaborate with other partners out there. And I guess like how do you approach the collaboration with other like agencies in town or beyond that you've collaborated with over the years?
Stay in your lane is the easiest thing that I've had. That is not me talking to you, but that's our philosophy for ourselves and others. Most commonly, we'll get brought in by communication shops and PR shops and folks like that, where they say like, hey, we need help crafting a really creative campaign, or they need a website. And then, we just try to, and we've learned this from where things have gone afoul. And so we've discovered, hey, we're not going to tell you how to write that press release. We're not going to tell you how to redo the copy. All we want is, we're designing the website, we got the campaign, and we do the headline and content on the homepage. You are responsible for everything else. We're not going to fight you. If you're an SEO specialist, we're not going to fight you on that. We're not going to fight you on all those things. Likewise, we always make it very clear, like there's only so many rounds of revision. You can decide if this other agency that might have like brought us in wants to burn a round of revision, or if you want to have notes that you package up with the client. For us, that's been the clearest thing, because there's already like, it's what Huts will say, like there's already too many cooks in the kitchen. And normally I have to like back out because you can't have he and I with different concepts. This other PR agency that has one or two thoughts, then the marketing team, and then the CEO, that like it's too much. And so for us, we found the best way we collaborate is upfront. Who is exactly responsible for what, and where does my lane start and end? So that's probably the best thing I could say for us.
Yeah, we see that too. So that's good point. What do you think is like a common misconception about running or working with an agency?
A common misconception. Well, so I will admit I have a little bit of like forest for the trees on this, because if for clients that choose to work with us, they've already self-selected into a bit of a process. So I think a misconception is that you can get great work if you already, like folks that say, we no longer have clients like this, but they would say, I already know what I have in my head. I just need someone to bring it to life, right? Or some version of that. So I would say the misconception that what you already have is the best option for your brand. You just need to go to somebody to get it extracted. If that's the case, dude, go to a production shop. You don't need a creative agency for that. You need a production shop where you want to play art director and you want to tell and dictate exactly what it is. Otherwise, you're overpaying for creative ideas and concepting and someone to give you this outside look. If That's not your bag. That's great. Go hire a really cheap shop. And so for us, we've had a lot of tension at times where it's like, well, what are you paying us for? If you already had the concept and what you wanted, then you paid way too much to go to a creative shop for that. It sounds like I'm shit talking clients real bad.
No.
I'm trying to just talk about best fit for us.
Yeah. Let me bring it back to when you started FoxFuel, you burned your ships, you had no way to go back. I guess you could have got a job somewhere else, but you'd put a second mortgage on your house, so the likelihood was pretty slim. But I guess, what do you think is a common misconception of people that want to go start an agency?
Common misconception.
Do they think it's like easier? Do they, did you think it was going to be easier, harder than what it was?
Oh, I thought it'd be easy. I was riding the highs of mania. Like if you
were Superman at that time.
Yeah, in my own mind, yeah. Mm-hmm. So for what it's worth, real quick, because I mentioned this, some agency owners may relate. So my brain does a really bad job of regulating like 5 things. So it's norepinephrine, which breaks down to epinephrine, which is adrenaline. Dopamine, you know what dopamine does, all the hits of the good feelings, endorphins, serotonin, and glutamate, right? All of these things regulate how excited you are, how confident you are. The amygdala and these neurotransmitters are what help you with risk tolerance, right? And so the rationale and reasoning of like, what is the threat that I'm assessing, which sure, we could talk about like when you're a hunter-gatherer, but even in modern times, how much of a threat is this financial situation, right? Or is this project, or whatever it might be. When my brain is in full-blown mania, it has all of the adrenaline and excitement and confidence and dopamine, like all of my reward centers are pinging with risk because it's exciting, which means my rationale and my amygdala does a really bad job of assessing just how dangerous is this scenario and how confident should you be. So when we started the agency, there's no way it could fail. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking in my head, I was like, so what, dude? Financially you have everything riding on this. If you go bankrupt at 30, I no wife or kids or anything. I was like, I'll just start over. And in my head, it was like, it's just an easy thing to do should this happen. So it's hard for me to relate sometimes to what's necessary. I can say it served me very well in my specific experience. And I would argue that, yes, probably a measured but healthy level of confidence might suit folks well, even in times in those early days, especially when I was pitching something. I never lied and said, we've done this dozens of times. But I would use language like, the best way to approach a project like this is. I didn't say that I've done it 100 times. I just said the best way to approach this project is. And then internally, I'm like, this is the first time you've approached this project, Colton. But saying it this way makes it sound like you're a lot more confident. So.
That is so funny, man. That is you oversell, right? And at the beginning, just to get the project, it's like, can you do it? Yeah, we can do this. Oh man, how the heck are we going to do this, right? Probably. How about some of those early projects? Like, was there an anchor client at the very beginning that helped you kind of get up and off the ground? Did you charge them like $1,000 for a website just because you needed money to keep the lights on? How did that all work?
Yeah, so I mean, to put it in perspective, so the note that the agency was paying to myself for my second mortgage, for my family, to my grandmother, the doctor friend, that was at that time, that monthly note would have paid for 2 additional employees. Like that was, and we would always think about that, which was like, when we get this note paid off, we can hire more help, right? Or sure, keep more money for ourselves, but it was normally getting the work done, right? So when we bought out our non-competes, we bought the ability to, because there were like the agency we bought from, they had no contracts. There was no like book of business we were buying. We were buying just the right to go to these clients and say, hey, I'm starting an agency in my basement. Would you like to be one of our first clients, right? And so St. Thomas Health at the time, Ascension St. Thomas now, we were the digital agency for them. And so that was honestly like, that floated for the first couple of years. Depending on the year, anywhere between like literally 40 to 60% of our billings.
Wow.
What sucks? The moment we bought them was the same year that Ascension started spinning up an internal agency and cutting all of their other agencies, which means that in those first 2 years or so, we bought them at the highest premium when they were only decreasing billings. Like inside 3 years, Ascension had fired 100 different agencies in all of their markets. They fired all of their agencies, including us. And then when the agency they hired to replace them choked on all the work, they came back and said, can we hire you again to do a campaign, which was one of our favorite campaigns with the Titans quarterback at the time, Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
And we had 6 hours with Marcus Mariota to shoot a commercial. No reshoot, no nothing, because his contract, it was $1 million contract, and all it got them was a single 6-hour shoot day. That was it. And his likelihood and go tour schools and do hospital stuff, but commercial-wise, one commercial shoot for 6 hours, and that was it. And it was such a fun project.
Yeah, wow. Well, what do you think, like, as we're starting to wrap up the show, What do you think sets FoxFuel apart from the rest in the Nashville market space?
There's a lot of great agencies doing good work. You do great work. I walked past. I couldn't, like, honestly, Mark, you walk in the building here, I can't see for all the shiny awards. Just hallways and hallways of all, just the glare, Mark. I can't.
Come on. I
can't.
So how do you pitch against us? When we, no.
I don't like to pitch against, in a real way, I don't like to pitch against other agencies. I don't think it looks right. Don't get me wrong. Maybe I've said stuff in the past, but by and large, what I try to say is like, hey, man, like when people are talking about this or that authenticity piece, which I didn't realize, I normally say, if somebody like points it to us, right, like whether it's another web shop or this or whatever, I say, go to our website, man. If you look at our website and their website and you think they're the same, for shops that I know of that are like, oh, they don't lean as much on the creative, right?
Yeah.
They do websites and a lot of PR and comms. Like you can tell the kinds of shops and what they excel in. I normally go, if you look at our body of work and our website and from this in-person meeting, if it's not obvious to you, because we're a pricier agency, like we're normally priced, with most agencies that are, 4 to 10 times our size. I normally say like, if you can't tell the difference between those shops, then you're paying too much, right? For us, don't go with us. And so I say that. And then the other thing I say, we work a lot in the B2B space. And I think what we do on that specifically is we bring a very B2C feel. Like the thing that we normally say is, hey man, like at the end of the day, yes, it's a healthcare decision maker over revenue cycle management, right? At the end of the day, they're still a human, right? And so we try to cut back on like what's the jargon that's used. We try to avoid all of the common tropes and color schemes and all the things that feel inherently common in an industry. We normally try to come in and say, let's try and make this B2B company have a B2C feel that feels more like humans talking to humans is probably the route that we try to go. Yeah. I'd say that.
Wow. Well, that's powerful. And you guys, you've been lucky to have a great business partner that's super creative. I know Michael Hutzel has a great reputation in town too. So as you do, and you guys have done some amazing stuff. Let's get into a little rapid fire questions. What's a book or a podcast that you're into right now that is maybe shaping how you're thinking?
Dude, this is absurd. So there's a podcast called Mabim Bam, My Brother and Me, which is 3 brothers that run an advice show. So they answer Yahoo Answers questions as though it's an advice show being written in like a Dear Abby column. And so it's not about agency or business or anything. Here's what I like about it. It's 3 brothers, in improv comedy, the concept of yes and. I take something you're saying, I say yes, and I build on it. It's weird, but I think in like the creative process, watching these 3 brothers that are hysterical run this hour-long podcast where all they're doing is riffing on each other and building in like this really positive, hysterical way. I honestly think it helps me when I'm thinking about how do I work with somebody else that has a different idea or this and like yes and to really do something creative. So that is not your business podcast at all, my man.
And it's called Mabim Bam?
Mabim Bam, which stands for My Brother, and Me.
Wow. We'll have to tune into that one. So how about a piece of advice you'd give to your younger creative self?
My piece of advice I'd give to my younger creative self. I'd say, dude, go with your gut, which I did. I always did, but normally, especially in the creative process, like even if I thought the end product would be a bad idea, just finding the ways to access that creative flow state, which was commonly like, dude, there's no way they're going to go for this pitch. But in your head and in the brainstorming session with the team, go pursue the wild thing and then figure out how to rein it back or how to make it actually work, even if it initially doesn't fit the constraints of the brief or the idea at all. So,
wow. Well, Colton, this has been an amazing episode. Is there anything that we didn't ask you that you think might help the listeners today?
You know what I wish you would have asked me?
Yeah, please.
Hey, why am I, Mark Scrivener, such a great podcast host? That's the question you should have asked me, Mark.
Hey, listen, we're just getting started, Colton. The team tells me, hey, Mark, you're getting better and better every single time. But at the beginning, it was horrible. I'm just now getting okay.
I disagree. Dude, you were prepared. You had your questions. You kept the conversation going. Not every podcast goes this way, my dude. So a shout out to you.
Well, Colton, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for being a part of the Spark and Creative Assembly. Really appreciate everything you've given today and everything you're doing for the community and agencies around Nashville. So thank you.
Mark, thank you so much. I love what you're building, and you're an exciting dude to watch.
Awesome. Thanks, Colton. And that's a wrap for this episode of The Spark. A huge thanks to Colton for sharing not just strategy, but soul. Conversations like this remind us that branding isn't just about logos and taglines. It's about identity, belief, and clarity. If today's episode sparks something in you, we'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave us a review. That helps us reach more creatives across Nashville and beyond. And remember, The Spark isn't just a podcast. It's a growing community built on curiosity, courage, and connection. Until next time, stay creative, stay curious, and keep that spark.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Spark from Creative Assembly. Thanks for spending time with us and exploring the minds shaping Nashville's creative future. If you're walking away more inspired, connected, or energized, that's exactly the point. A big thank you to our sponsor, Snapshot, and the incredible team behind the scenes who make this show possible. Your support fuels every conversation and keeps collaboration alive. So if you haven't already, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, stay creative, stay curious, and keep that spark.